Hi, everybody. So this is going to be a quick video where we look at average rate of change, not from a function perspective, but rather from a graphical perspective. So we have a graph that we're showing over here on the left on Desmos, and we're going to go through and we're going to figure out the average rate of change of the function on the interval 0, 3 without actually using the formula. We're just going to use the graph. So what we have to do is we have to recall from our last video that the average rate of change is going to be our change in output divided by our change in input. Okay, so this is what we're trying to compute here. What is change in output? And then we're going to take that and we're going to divide by the change in input. Okay, so our goal becomes when we look at the graph, we need to figure out, hey, what are our outputs and what are our inputs from this graph? So the first piece of information that we have is this over here. So we have this value 0, and then we have this value 3. Okay, so what we're saying here is when we look at the average rate of change, what we're considering is we are considering the interval. Okay, so on our graph, the interval 0, 3, we're saying, like, if I move from 0 all the way out to 3 on my graph here in yellow, if I move along that, what are we going to have? How fast are we going to be changing on average? So our starting point is 0. So I'm going to go to 0. I'm going to look at my graph. I'm going to find this point. Okay, so that point on my graph here is 0, 1. And then I'm going to go out to 3. So that's the ending point of my interval. And I'm going to find the value there. So 3, if we go up on our graph over at 3, that is the point 3, 4. Okay, so what I have when I look at this is I have an output. So my outputs go from 1 to 4 when my inputs go from 0 to 3. Right? So if we put this into our formula down here, change in output over change in input, then well, I went from 1 to 4. So you could just think about that as 3. But if we wanted to match it up with our formula from before, we would have f of, right? So we'd have f of 3 minus f of 0 all over 3 minus 0, right? So this is what we would want to see. And then from our graph, we get that f of 3 is really 4. And then I'm going to take away from that f of 0. Okay, so that was our green value. F of 0 is 1. And then all of this is going to be divided by 3 minus 0. So that's going to be our change in input. Okay, and so what this ends up being, altogether, 4 minus 1 is 3. 3 minus 0 is 3. And so our average rate of change here over this interval is 1. So, we can see that, right, our inputs we're going to travel. So as we move from left to right, our inputs go way up. They come back down, but on average, as I move from left to right, we increase by 1, right? So our outputs increase by 1 every time our inputs increase by 1. Right? So this is just a quick example where we can read the average rate of change from a graph.